Hello everybody and welcome to my free cash guide for Arcane Rush for $334. The big ticket item is to get Fiddle Master in 10 days for $100, and we can do that pretty easy in about 4 days if you play a lot, so let's get on to it. This game took me about 40 hours to complete, so you have plenty of time. If you can knock it out in 2 or 3 days, you can do that really quick. I'll give you some tips on how to do so. If you're wondering who Fiddle is, that's one of the characters we're going to be playing as. The other task we have is to play as Saya, so we have to get both of them into the Masters tier. And the gameplay is going to be pretty similar for both of these characters. At the start of the game, there's going to be this little slot animation. It's going to show 3 different factions. These are going to be the primary factions that are going to be in the pool of characters to pick from. It's very important to pay attention to this and not to forget it. Next up is going to be the hero selection. This hero is going to give you either a passive or active ability that lasts throughout the entire game. There's a lot of heroes in the pool, and so you only get shown 2 or 3 at a time, and you generally want to match it up with what units are going to be in the game to be played. As you can already tell, there's going to be a lot of variables in the game, like what type of units are in there and what heroes you're shown at the start of the game to pick from, so it's very important to be flexible. You don't want to go into the game with the mindset of every single time you're going to play dwarves or dragons or orcs. You need to see what's going to be in the game and then adapt to that. The gameplay is an auto-battler where you'll select a hero from a pool of 3 in the shop each turn. You'll be giving money where you can either choose to tier up your tavern, which then increases the maximum level of the characters that you can pick from, or you can buy the characters there. If you get 3 of the same unit, they'll upgrade to a gold unit. They're stronger and they merge all their stats into one unit, and you also get a portal which lets you get a unit of a higher tier at random. Money isn't saved between rounds, so if you have 1 or 2 coins left over at the end of the round, I highly recommend that you just refresh the shop, because if you see a unit that you may want in the future or that can give you an upgrade, you can freeze the shop until next turn and then use your coins then to purchase those upgrades. In the game that I'm playing, there were 2 roles on the dwarves, so there is a plentiful amount of dwarves in the pool, so I decided to go with the dwarf faction as the main variance. In the first level, I was given a barrier unit, and barrier is very important because they can take damage for free 1 time, so that effectively doubles the damage and HP that unit can use. So he's usually the first one that I pick up if he's shown in the shop. The first few matches of the game are actually an elimination tournament. You have to get points through winning or drawing. Winning will get you 3 points, and drawing will get you 1 point. You then have to place in the top 4 in order to progress into the next level. If you don't go in the top 4, you'll automatically lose and lose ranking points. What I found is most useful is when you're in the last 1 to 2 rounds, you don't really need to worry about building your board through buying shop items. What you can do is instead focus on upgrading the level of your shop. That way you have higher tier units, and then when you get into the actual gameplay, it gets a lot easier because you are ahead of everybody else who is still tier 1 or tier 2. The dwarves have a massive power spike at the tier 3 due to one specific character called the Highland Headhunter. He has a passive whenever a dwarf takes damage, he gives your units +1/+1, and then the golden variant also gives you +2/+2. You'll also be able to upgrade your units permanently as you upgrade Fiddle and her abilities. You'll be able to upgrade the dwarves specifically, so they will permanently get buffs where eventually they can get +3/+3 or +6/+6. So if you have 2 of these on board, whenever your unit takes damage, they get +12/+12. And what is super huge about this is if your unit drops below 0 HP, your dwarf can then still basically give it stats to effectively heal it back to an HP value where it is still alive. So this unit is just really good. You'll see it in every dwarf deck. Dwarves are really consistent, and I like picking them as much as I can whenever they're in the wheel. The only class that I found that is generally better than dwarves is dragons, but you can play dwarves all the way up to like gold 4, and they will carry you all the way through with minimal effort. So let's talk about the general composition of dwarves that you're going to be building. Like I said earlier, this rock bouncer with barrier, if I see him in the first one, I'm picking him automatically because he can generally trade or win that first round all by himself. The gold digger is another pretty efficient pickup early on. 3 HP is very hard to kill in those bronze to silver tiers, and when you get him up to 4, he's even stronger. That'll get you up to the high tiers of silver, but he doesn't really scale until he gets up to the level 4 and he has 5 HP again. There are things called like breakthrough points in other video games where the highest HP that you need on the field for it to live a turn and not die scales the higher up you go. So 4 HP will not do that well when you're in gold because a lot of things have 2 damage and they respawn with 2 more damage, so then they can trade in. So whereas the 5 HP is going to be like twice as effective as 4 HP, even though it's just 1 HP more. One of the main things in this game is to not get attached to cards that you play. It's very easy, and very often you'll find yourselves selling cards to buy a card, to play a card, to sell a card. So you're going to be running through a big rotation until you get a very consistent board state where you like what you have and it's very strong and it all meshes together. The dwarves can give each other brews, which gives you a +1/+1 stat to a minion, and then they also have an ability called Cheers, where whenever they get a brew, the Cheers ability is triggered. So the board state that you want to generally have is something that generates brews, and then you want a character that has the Cheers ability, and you want to have these Highland Headhunters on the board to buff everybody whenever they take damage. My favorite composition is early game I'll pick up a Rock Bouncer, and then I will pick up this Clumsy Attendant. Whenever he gets hurt, he gets a brew. So then if you put more brews on him, he's tankier, so then he can get hit harder, so that he can get you more brews. So there's a lot of good recurring value in this guy. Bruce Lee, even though he says you get 2 brews, it's at the end of your turn, so then you cannot effectively use those brews when you want to trigger those cheers. So whenever I see him, I generally just pass over him because he's not really effective, even though he has okay stats for tier 3. Then I'll pick up a Vault Keeper. Whenever it's at the end of a turn, he gives a brew to me and my allies in my row. And then I will pick up the Crazed Alchemist whenever I hit tier 4. Whenever he gets a brew, he gives a brew to a different ally, and then you pick up a Cheers Union. Whenever you trigger a Cheers ability, you get your dwarves +1/+1 permanently. So basically, the Vault Keeper gives a brew to the Chemist gives a brew to somebody else, and then the Union gets 2 Cheers triggers. And then whatever brews you have from the Clumsy Attendant, whenever he gets hit, you can put on a minion, give that to the Crazed Alchemist, he gives it to somebody else, Cheers Union, trigger. So there's a bunch of these kind of cascading triggers that then just make your guys these really beefy and really strong high HP units. Another thing I'd like to mention is the tier 5 units for dwarves are really not all that powerful. Probably the best one is the Toastmaster. He gives your units +2/+2, and your brews get an extra +2/+2. So occasionally I'll sell a unit to then make room for Toastmaster, use all my brews, sell Toastmaster, and then put another one of these tier 4 or tier 3 units on there. The tier 5s aren't really that great because all your strong units are in this tier 3 and tier 4 category. Whenever you win a game, you'll get 50 points, and you need 5,500 points in order to reach Masters, which would then be about 110 games. However, whenever you are on a hot streak, you get bonus points, so as long as you can keep a streak going in that very early tiers from like 0 to 2,500, you pretty much can knock your games down in half, which is really good because dwarves are easy in the early games. Not everybody has a lot of high damage, so they can't deal with their high HP values. So definitely try and stick dwarves, but don't force it if there's not dwarves in the pool. You can level up Fiddle herself by spending 300 gold, and whenever you have 100 of her XP, whenever you do so, it increases the level of your units and makes them a lot stronger. It also unlocks other races, so at level 4 you need to unlock dwarves, and at level 10 you unlock Undead. However, do not go past level 39, because once you reach level 40, you unlock demons, and demons are the worst class. So you're just adding a lot of bad cards into your pool, and then you'll effectively make all your games a lot worse because your pool is diluted with a lot of bad cards. Alright, now that we talked a lot about dwarves, let's go ahead and talk about the second strongest class called dragons. You can also use dragons really effectively with Saya whenever you go to play her all the way up to Masters. Dragons have a mechanic called Devour, which means they will eat an ally and gain all of their stats, so it's best not to get attached to your dragons as you play them because you're going to be constantly eating them to get bigger and bigger dragons. The tier 1 units for dragons are pretty strong. The Basilisk is a really high HP unit. It has that breakthrough point already built into it, so it's going to be able to tank a lot of damage and trade into a lot of those lower HP units and win you a couple rounds by itself. The Fire Spitter is really good because it permanently gains 1 damage whenever it kills something, so then whenever one of your dragons later on that devours it, it's going to have a lot of attack because this guy's going to have 10 plus attack easily every single time. Early game, you're not going to win too many fights, you're going to probably trade off, so that means you're going to need to pick up some value units in order to win those later matches, that way you qualify for later, because dragons are definitely a late game class that just dominates once they get that steamroll going, so just pick up whatever units are going to be sticky on the board, that way you can win those 4 or 5 preliminary games, and then you can get into the main game and secure those points to get Masters. You definitely want to get into the second tier once you secure your place on the leaderboard into a position where you don't have to worry about losing, or once you get past it and you're past the preliminary area, you can sacrifice a turn of HP in order to get to tier 2, because the Drake Charmer is really important. It's whenever you play a dragon, give another ally dragon +2/+2, And because you're devouring a bunch of units, you're going to have space on that board to constantly be playing dragons. So every time you're playing a dragon, you're getting +2/+2. You're devouring, you're getting all those stats. This is pretty much like the Dwarven one that gives +1 whenever they get hit. It's not as strong, but it is pretty powerful, and it's really, really good to have one or two of these on the board at the same time. The tier 3 units are kind of meh, but the best one is going to be the Flaming Menace. He devours all allies in a row, so he can clear out 2 board spaces by himself, and he's just going to be a big, strong guy. He's going to have a lot of HP. At this point in the game, you're going to kind of stagnate because you're a little strong in the early game, but you're really strong in the late game, and you have an okay mid game. Right now, you just want to be devouring dragons and then tiering up to tiers 4 and especially tier 5. Tier 4, the best dragon is going to be Ozarek Eternal Flame. At the start of the round, he captures the enemy unit, and if it survives, he gains its stats. So if there's an enemy that has a really strong unit like the Dwarf, you can set it up, that way it kidnaps it, and it's not going to be getting all those stats on those Dwarves until this dies, or maybe for the entire round if it survives. The AI is not smart enough to kind of navigate around this. They're generally going to have their units on the same round, or the same tile each round, so you can really plan where this goes to steal the hardest unit, and you're in control of how well the match goes as a result. As you get into the late game, you're going to have like 200 HP dragons due to the fact that you can play like this Ascendant Worm, which when it plays and dies, it gives +1/+1. So you'll play this guy, he'll give +1/+1 to each dragon. Then let's say you play Rude the Tyrant, who's really strong. He devours an ally and gives an ally dragon +3/+3 for each unit you've devoured this game. So then you devour the worm, who gives a +1/+1, and then Rue's going to give something like +60/+60 because you've just devoured a bunch of units this game. And then at that point in the game, it's pretty much just over because your dragons are like 300 to 700 HP and nothing can kill it. So let's say you don't get dwarves or dragons in your pool. That's perfectly fine because the Undead is definitely in the top 3 and I love playing them. They're really strong and their minions are really sticky on the board. They are good against dragons and they are weaker against dwarves, but they still can win because they have a lot of resilience. Your tier 1 units are the strongest in the game and you'll be able to win that preliminary area in the first one. So the best one is going to be the Helping Hand. He summons a 0/2 Risen, and the 0/2 Risen gets +1/+1 for each time it's spawned. So every time this guy dies, he'll summon the Risen, and then it'll be a 1/3, and then it'll be a 2/4, and then it'll be a 3/5. So this just gets stronger throughout the game, so if you pick this up on turn 1, it's going to be like a 28/28 by the end of the game, easily before any other buffs. The Disguised Spiders is also really strong because as you upgrade it through the Tavern tier, it becomes a 1/1 and a 1/2, which means that it can trade, and then the spiders that it summons becomes a 1/2 or a 1/3, which means that you're going to have 3 units on turn 1, so you're almost guaranteed to always win turn 1 with these two. The tier 2 units are meh at best. The Skeleton is probably the best out of the tier 2 because it just gives your other units flat damage, but you really want to skip towards tier 3 because you're already winning those early rounds. You don't have to worry about losing them. The Bloodless Mary is super strong because she summons those O2 Risen, and the Risen buff stacks. So let's say if the Helping Hand dies, and then it summons a 1/3, then when you summon these 0/2s, they will then buff the other one that's already alive, and then you will have 3, like 4 6s on the board. And then the best card out of all of these guys is the Riptide Revenant. Basically, whenever this dies, the next time a different ally with cursed attacks, he gets summoned. So let's say that you have the Helping Hand, the Risen attacks, this guy pops out of the grave and attacks. And then you have these Risens, those two attack, and then this guy pops out. So then you're getting 16 value extra just from this guy already dying, and then you haven't even attacked with these two yet. So it's just a lot of damage for free. He is super good, and he combos really well with the Summoner. Whenever you summon an Undead, give it +5/+5. So this guy can be like a 9/7 or like a 16 something whenever you get this guy golden. So it's really important that you pick this up and then combo with those Risens because you just have so much unlimited value. Thanks for watching, guys. If you want to join the Discord, go ahead and do so. The Patreon and the Discord link are going to be in the description. If you enjoy what I do, please consider subscribing to the Patreon. We're still on our march to monetization. We're currently at 1291 watch hours out of the 3,000 we need, so if you liked it, go ahead and rewatch my videos a couple times to boost those watch hours. Once we get to the 3,000, we're going to be doing a $100 giveaway in the Discord, so double check and make sure to join that.